Welcome, everyone. I'm Sandra Bargman. A few years ago, I wrote and performed a solo show called The Edge of Every Day, which was an exploration of the rough edges and contradictions we all face and grapple with. The show hit a nerve, and the relevance of the topic would only grow over time, more than I could have foreseen. So, here we are. Real talk with real people, sharing stories and perspectives that spark provocative invitations to leap out of what's safe, on the edge of every day. Thanks for listening. Hello, everyone. We are live in the Hive. Thank you for joining me on this, the 28th episode of The Edge of Every Day here on talkradio.nyc. For those of you who are tuning in for the first time, and for those of you who don't know me yet, I encourage you to check out my bio on talkradio.nyc, or of course, you can visit my website, sandrabargman.com. And please tune in to any of my previous episodes with my inspiring guests. In a nutshell, this show is about celebrating triumphs, pushing boundaries, and exploring rough edges. Through conversations and shared stories with friends and colleagues, it's my hope that we can begin to understand our edges. And what I mean by edges is those places where we are fearful, those places where we're resistant to change, those places where paradoxes and contradictions live in our beliefs, in our understandings, both about ourselves and about the world around us. Those places we don't want to look. We live in turbulent times, and we are coming to understand that life isn't simply black or white. It must be an embrace of both. And the more we recognize our own edges and get real about them, the more we can help others to do the same. And that, I fully believe, can help to change the world. So, thanks for tuning in. And without further ado, it is time to introduce our guest this evening. Judi Neal is an author, scholar, speaker, and consultant. Her primary focus has been on workplace spirituality, transformation, and global consciousness. After receiving her Ph.D. in organizational behavior from Yale University, she served as an internal consultant to Honeywell for 8 years. Judi then taught management at the University of New Haven for 17 years. Her research was on business leaders who have a strong commitment to their spirituality, and she researched the ways in which they bridged the invisible world of spirituality and the material world of business. Judi was founding director of the Tyson Center for Faith and Spirituality in the Workplace at the University of Arkansas. She was a co-founder and former chair of the Management, Spirituality, and Religion Interest Group. As one of the founding editors of the Journal of Management, Spirituality, and Religion, she is on the journal's editorial board and is also on the board of the journal's parent organization, the International Association of Management, Spirituality, and Religion. Judi now serves as the executive director of the Global Consciousness Institute. Judi was the founder of the International Center for Spirit at Work and the International Spirit at Work Awards, and is the president of Edgewalkers International, a workplace spirituality community. Judi is the author of 8 books on workplace spirituality and transformation, including Edgewalkers, People in Organizations That Take Risks, Build Bridges, and Break New Ground. Her recent books are Integrating Change, The Art, the Craft, and the Science of Transforming Organizations, published September 2021, and Workplace Spirituality, Making a Difference, published in January 22. In her spare time, she writes songs and plays guitar and electric bass in an all-woman band called She's Us. Welcome, Judi.
Thank you, Sandra. Thank you. Thank you for that introduction.
Oh my goodness, a complete pleasure. I mean, I could go on and on. Her bio could go on and on. Just incredible, prolific amount of writing and service to the world. This is such an honor to have you on my show.
Oh, thank you. It's really an honor to be here because you and I are in the same conversation. We care about the same things. So I'm so excited about this time we've got
Oh,
together.
truly, truly, truly. Well, I always like to start out with the way that I have my guests on the show, and I just love this story so much. I have to tell it. So I was invited by a girlfriend of mine, Leslie Michaels, who wrote a book called On the Shoulders of Mighty Women. It's coming out in June, and she asked me to contribute a chapter to it. And I'm going to have Leslie on June 6th. So listeners take note. Anyway, I came up with, while I was writing it, I came up with the title Reluctant Leader. And I started thinking about the phrase that I walk along the edges of so many different communities, and I don't find myself always in the center of them. And I don't know what inspired me. One day, I just literally just Googled it, edge walking and walking the edges of communities. And edgewalkers.org springs up on my computer, and it's a thing. It's a thing. And on this website is a profile about edgewalkers, talking about the qualities that they have, the profile, the skills that they have as people, as leaders. And your focus, of course, is on the workplace. And so we're going to dive completely into that. But I loved what I read, and I took the profile and I reached out directly to Judi, who responded immediately. And we've had 2 Zoom conversations, and I just feel such a kinship, and like I've known you forever. And it's just such a joy to have discovered you and your profound work. So let's dive in. What's Edgewalkers? Tell us who and what is an Edgewalker, Judi Neal?
Yeah, you've already described so much of it, and you live it. So
I do indeed.
yeah, it's an edge walker, someone who walks between worlds,
Mm.
and you can define that in lots of different ways. I define it primarily between the material world and the spiritual world, or you might say the visible and the invisible world. That we know there's something more than just what meets the eye. But it could also be defined as walking between cultures
Yeah.
or walking between different functions in an organization, being a bridge builder, being a translator, being someone who pushes the edges. Edge walkers get bored very easily.
Very easily.
Yeah, it's like, I want to know what's next, what's new, what's emerging. Just a tremendous curiosity and a hunger to know more about the world and to expand our own edges and boundaries. So
Indeed.
that's the primary definition. Someone who walks between worlds and builds bridges between those worlds.
And hybrids connects them.
Yeah.
Tell me, were you somebody, we're going to get back to edge walkers, but were you aware that you were aware as a young person? Were you aware that you were going between worlds?
Yeah, I really was.
So was I. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and probably a lot of your listeners are too.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, I had mystical experiences as a child, and I knew enough not to talk about them,
Right.
because people would think I was crazy. I was afraid that's what they would think, and I didn't feel like I was crazy. I felt like those mystical experiences were beautiful, they were comforting, they
Mm.
provided wonderful information. And so I counted on them as another way of knowing what reality is.
Absolutely. Yeah, I always I talk about people like you and I. This is how I describe myself. I was the kid with the antenna
Ah,
in the
uh-huh.
corner of the room that could go jump between the energies and
Mm-hmm.
could really understand the energy that was at play and where those edges were.
Mm-hmm.
Um, So your understanding of going between being an edge walker was something that you walked with your whole life. So how did you, what spurred the understanding of Edgewalker? I mean, tell us the story of how Edgewalker evolved.
Yeah, it's a confluence of different things,
I'm
which
sure.
is typical
Confluence
for
of
an
edges.
edgelord. Absolutely. Yeah, I had been interested in spirituality and spirituality applied to the workplace because of some of my own experiences of living my spirituality at work and seeing what a difference it made,
Mm,
and both when I was in the corporate world and when I was in the university. And like I would pray before I walked into a meeting or into the classroom, and just ask for guidance to be my highest self and to bring love into the room, and magic would happen. And so I knew for me personally that it was making a difference, and for those I touched. And so I got curious and wanted to study that more. And I would run into people in conferences who were doing the same thing. So I knew I wasn't alone. And that's really important because when we're on the edge actually means not being in the center, not being in the mainstream. And that can be on the margin,
yeah.
to be marginalized, which is lonely, which, we're tribal animals and we want to be a part of things. And yet we don't want to be restricted by the middle, by the center. And so it's a interesting, edgy place to be. And so I began interviewing leaders that I ran into or I heard about, who had a strong spiritual life and who were very effective. Because this was back in the early 90s, and the common wisdom was, if you're spiritual, you're not practical. If you're
Right, of course.
spiritual, you're flaky.
Yeah. Ooh,
Yeah, if you're spiritual, you're new agey, and that means fluffy and
yeah. You're not intellectual. You're not, certainly not academic.
certainly not academic.
Questionable on all the edges.
Yeah, absolutely. But I was finding these wonderful leaders. I mean, the vice president for AT&T, a vice president international, he ran AT&T for Canada, and his name was Michael Stevens, and he was raised Catholic and went to mass every day when he could, which was most of the time, but he traveled internationally. And then he studied meditation, and he would meditate for 20 minutes a day. And he really got so centered that he felt that his effectiveness was because he was a more loving being wherever he was. And his policies became loving. He really cared about the human beings who worked for the company. And so he created loving policies. And I'd meet people like him, and it was so encouraging, and I could tell his story, and that would encourage other people. And so I was doing that research on what these leaders were doing, who were very effective and very spiritual. Many different traditions, some no religious tradition whatsoever, but very committed to some kind of spiritual practice.
Beautiful.
And at the same time, I was running a leadership group where the group met in my house once a month.
Oh,
And
lovely.
they would bring a business issue. And
Okay, I'm going to interrupt you real quickly here because we've got to go to break. This is a
Okay.
great moment. So the business group, we're going to hear
Yes.
about the business group in your home when we come back from break. And then we're going to move into workplace spirituality and all of the books that Judi has written when we come back on the Edge of Everyday with Dr. Judi Neal. Stay tuned.
Are you a business owner? Do you want to be a business owner? Do you work with business owners? Hi, I'm Stephen Fry, your small and medium-sized business or SMB guy, and I'm the host of the new show, Always Friday. While I love to have fun on my show, we take those Friday feelings of freedom and clarity to discuss popular topics on the minds of SMBs today. Please join me and my various special guests on Friday at 11 a.m. on talkradio.nyc.
Are you a conscious co-creator? Are you on a quest to raise your vibration and your consciousness? I'm Sam Leibowitz, your conscious consultant. And on my show, The Conscious Consultant Hour Awakening Humanity, we will touch upon all these topics and more. Listen live at our new time on Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern Time. That's The Conscious Consultant Hour Awakening Humanity, Thursdays, 12 noon on talkradio.nyc.
Are you on edge? Hey, we live in challenging, edgy times, so let's lean in. I'm Sandra Bargman, the host of The Edge of Every Day, which airs each Monday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on talkradio.nyc. Tune in live with me and my friends and colleagues as we share stories and perspectives about pushing boundaries and exploring our rough edges. That's The Edge of Every Day on Mondays at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC. Uplift, educate, empower.
Chipping around, kick my brain to the ground. These are the days it never rained, but it pours
On the edge of every day. And we are back with Dr. Judi Neal. So let's dive back into that story in your living room.
So the leaders met once a month. They would bring a business problem, and then we would all support that person energetically as well as with practical guidance. And then during the month, we would hold that person in prayer or in the light or whatever each person's spiritual practice was, so that they felt supported during that whole month. And then they would come back and report what happened, and miracles would happen over and over again.
Oh my gosh.
And so it was this wonderful practical and spiritual integration. And at the same time, I read an article in Fast Company magazine, which had just come out, and it talked about how change happens on the edge of systems. And I went, oh my goodness, when I think about all my work and organizational change, it's the mainstream is for stability, the edges are for transformation. And I always felt on the edge of a system. And then I realized, well, that's where I like being, and I want to help support change. That's home, even though it's lonely sometimes and uncomfortable, and as you say, rough. It's a rough edge. Yeah, and so I was reading that, and I was talking about how they told the group about this article, and I said, they're like edgewalkers. I just sort of made the word up because one of the things the article said was it's holographic. People who are on the edge of systems, who are change agents, tend to live on the edge of town. They just want to be on the edge of systems all the time. So I went, they're edgewalkers. And the group went, we are edgewalkers. And they just, felt so attracted to that term. And then I started sharing that idea with other people, and they really got it and began asking me questions that I couldn't answer about edgewalkers. So I had to, interview more people and write about it and figure out what this thing is. And so it's juicy.
Yeah, very juicy. Real quick, the reason my show is called The Edge of Every Day is my husband and I were out driving, and there was a skeleton of a restaurant in the Catskills that we pretended, what would we call it if we bought that and turned it into something? And I said, The Edge. And he said, right. And he said, how about the edge effect? He said, did you know that that's a scientific term? He's a scientist. I said, no, tell me all about the edge effect. And he said, it's where two different ecosystems come together. That edge is where you find the most diversity, the most creativity, the most, so it's exactly the same thing in the ecosystems. That's where the vibrancy is, where the change making happens, where the hybrids and the interweaving happens. Fascinating.
Oh, I love that story.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Fascinating. So, so then you've just been developing that really became this, you firmly planted in the Edgewalker understanding and fleshed that out. But you continued, and we're going to get into this in the next section, some other archetypes. But the Edgewalker is edgewalkers.org for those of you who are listening who want to jump on that website in our next commercial break. So I want to back up a little to your an intro more into your workplace spirituality. What was the spark that got you into doing those two, combining spirituality? Was it literally like you noticed that you liked who you were better when you were actively bringing that into your workplace, or was it a confluence of other things?
It was other things, because I thought that I should never, ever talk about my own spirituality or be open about it.
Yes,
Again,
you stay in that closet.
Yep, stay in the closet. And there was a real precipitating event. I was working for Honeywell at an ammunition plant, and I was in charge of organizational development. I found out Honeywell was making faulty ammunition knowingly, and I blew the whistle. And that was the most terrifying moment of my life, because there was a movie out right at that time called Karen Silkwood. And
right.
in that movie, Karen gets killed for blowing the whistle. And so I was really terrified, but I was also terrified of not speaking out, because I felt like I could never live with myself if I didn't do something about this, because our own servicemen could die because this was ammunition for the Army and the Navy and the Air Force, and it was not functional and could kill our own servicemen. So I blew the whistle, and it had been my private internal practice to read something spiritual before I go to sleep every night. And right the day I blew the whistle, that night, I'm like really feeling like it's difficult to go to sleep. What's going to happen next? What are they going to do to me? My husband got out his rifle and put it by the bed. She just, it was like really scary times. And that night I read in Shakti Gawain a chapter called "The Universe is a Mirror." And it says we attract to us that which we need to learn from, and that the universe will mirror us what we draw to us, what we need to know. And so I went, what is it that I need to learn from this experience? Because it just was so shocking to me. And I realized that if I put it into one word, the company lacked integrity. So if I say out there is a lack of integrity and turn it around and make that a mirror, I have to say, where do I lack integrity? And that was painful, but enlightening to see how I told people what they wanted to hear, because I was that nice lady from Human Resources. I was a people pleaser. I didn't speak out much at all. It was just, and I had to have courage, and I had to change everything about who I was and how I lived. And all of a sudden, those spiritual principles became how I had to live on the edge of every day. It had to be every day.
In every moment.
In every moment.
In every choice.
In every breath.
An extraordinary story. Thank you for what was the outcome from that?
Well, first of all, they threatened my life and I had to disappear for a while.
Oh my! I
was told by corporate to get out of town for my own safety. So it was pretty scary. And I had been a high talent, highly promotable person in HR, incredible future. Well, I knew that was over. That was completely over. So I had to say, okay, universe, what is it you want from me now? And all I got as an answer was trust. It'll be okay. And so I just began this time that I still live in called Trusting the Universe, and that I'll always be shown what's next. And what was next was to leave Honeywell and go into teaching, and to be able to try to have a more positive impact on future leaders, and to have them be able to lead with more integrity, with a sense of their own spirituality, with their own values. So that's why I taught for 17 years at the University of New Haven, and I was open about my spirituality, and I started doing research as an academic, and that led to the books and to Edgewalkers, and founding the Center for Spirit at Work and founding Edgewalkers International. What happened at Honeywell was I ended up bringing a lawsuit against them because they fired me. And basically what they did was they took away all my job duties when I was there, locked me in a room that I couldn't leave, and put the people I blew the whistle on in a meeting room right outside my window. Right outside my door. And so I had to walk by them every day and would hear things like, "That whistleblower's dead meat." Now, the whistleblower was supposed to be anonymous, but I clearly wasn't. And so I ended up several years later basically suing Honeywell and winning in federal court. So you can look up Neal versus Honeywell as a federal lawsuit, and I won. And the lawyers took most of the money. They worked hard, I have to give them that. And what I had left over allowed me to create the Center for Spirit at Work. I call it Honeywell's karma.
Integrity.
Yeah.
Integrity.
Yeah.
Universe rose up. Oh my, what a story. Wow. And I'm just going to seg into your teaching. I can so imagine that you are a breathtaking teacher.
I loved teaching, and I still do.
And you still are, for all intents and purposes, as a consultant, you're a teacher. And I mean, it weaves through all of your work, through your books, everything, of course.
Yeah, and I just taught a doctoral class on leadership at George Washington University. So I really literally was a teacher.
Oh, so you're still actively teaching. I didn't realize that. I thought for some reason.
Sometimes, when the right thing comes up. Yeah.
When the right thing comes up. When you are needed, as we need you. Well, this is a perfect moment to take our next break. And when we come back, Judi, we're going to talk about her books and continue talking about her work and workplace spirituality. And then we'll figure it out when we talk further what the rest of that section is going to be. When you come back on The Edge of Every Day with Dr. Judi Neal. Stay tuned.
Howdy, I am Joseph Franklin McElroy, host of the new podcast, Gateway to the Smokies. It airs on talkradio.nyc every Tuesday night from 6 p.m. to 7. Every episode is dedicated to memorable experiences in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park and surrounding areas. This show features experts and locals who expound upon the richness of culture, history, and adventure that awaits you in the Smokies. Tune in every Tuesday from 6 p.m. to 7 on talkradio.nyc.
Are you passionate about the conversation around racism? Hi, I'm Reverend Dr. TLC, host of the Dismantle Racism Show, which airs every Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern on talkradio.nyc. Join me and my amazing guests as we discuss ways to uncover, dismantle, and eradicate racism. That's Thursdays at 11 o'clock a.m. on talkradio.nyc.
Are you a small business trying to navigate the COVID-19 related employment laws? Hello, I'm Eric Sauver, employment law, business law attorney, and host of the new radio show, Employment Law Today. On my show, we'll have guests to discuss the common employment law challenges business owners are facing during these trying times. Tune in on Tuesday evenings from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern Time on talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
chipping around, kick my brain to the ground. These are the days it never rains, but it pours on the edge of every day.
And we are back with Dr. Judi Neal. So in this portion, I want to start off with your most recent book, Workplace Spirituality, and leap forward to what are the trends that you're seeing in today's business place with combining, I mean, because you've seen this movement from its inception. And have contributed to it enormously. So what trends are you, and do you talk about that in Workplace, your most recent book, what the trends are right now?
Yes.
Okay. Share a little bit about what they are with our listeners.
Well, I think it helps to go back to around the early 1990s when out of nowhere, there all of a sudden was a lot of publications about workplace spirituality being the next new thing. Fortune magazine and U.S. News and World Report and all these different magazines and newspapers and some TV shows and so on. And it was this wonderful expansion. I had just started the Center for Spirit at Work, and we had maybe 25 members. And when the U.S. News and World Report interviewed me, the next week I had 200 members, and then it was not long before I had 1,000 members, because the word was just getting out, and there's hunger for people to talk about their spirituality and how it's applied at work, and to make it more acceptable, to be more of a whole person. And then when we hit the 2000s, there started to be religious lawsuits for religious harassment, and all of a sudden there was this real pullback from the corporate world, like, oh, we can't talk about this because we might get sued. And that was one of the fastest growing areas of lawsuits. So the language really had to change, but the practices didn't, and the people's hunger for being their full selves in work didn't change. But what happened, and is really the major trend now, is mindfulness at work. And I love the story of how that began. It began at Aetna, the health insurance company, and a woman in HR in Aetna had her own mindfulness practice and found that it was so useful to her that she thought she'd offer a class to a few of her coworkers, and they found it very useful. So then they decided to talk to Duke University and get into some research, and I offered it to, I think it was something like 200 employees over maybe 6 months, where they went through a mindfulness program. And they found out that people's absenteeism went way down, their stress levels went way down, their creativity went up, their sense of leadership and compassion and connection went way up. And they found out that they saved something like $2 or $3 million in healthcare costs with that particular group, because people just weren't getting as sick or missing as many days. So there was a bottom line result. And then Google heard about it, and Google took off like crazy. And when anything Google does is cool.
Yeah.
So everybody started,
right?
Yeah, right.
They are on the cutting edge.
They are.
Oh my! Well, I mean, you really touch on this is this sense of being a part of something bigger and the interconnectedness of life. No, we don't need to proselytize about our particular religion, but we can all understand the interconnectedness of life. I mean, we wouldn't be in a spiritual or a environmental crisis if we had woven our sense of interconnectedness into every aspect of who we are. I got this off of one of your papers that I read today. I'm going to read. Business, the motor of our society, has the opportunity to be a new creative force on the planet, a force which could contribute to the well-being of many. For that to occur, we must all substantially increase our commitment to integrity and accountability, and courageously make a quantum leap in consciousness beyond conventional solutions, beyond opposing forces, beyond fear and hope. So perfect. But we need to it really is the workplace is the heart of it. It's really where this needs to show up, because
and
that's where the
spend most of
destruction
our-
is.
Yeah, I mean, how much of our day do we spend at work? Well, these days we spend it at work at home, but we're still interacting with colleagues as much, if not more,
Yeah.
than we used to. And so it's such an important part of our life.
Indeed. Well, this seems like a good place to jump to community. And we may not get to your agents, your diagram, but we may in the next section have enough time for that. I wanted to speak with you about Edgewalkers and building community, and you and I had talked a little bit about this, how this, I think everyone during COVID has been pulled to a sense of community in a very organic and what feels like a brand new way, and what I would think of it more as an ancient getting back to remembering who we were, like remembering who we are in workplace spirituality. When we remember, are reminded of our truth, then we behave accordingly. But yeah, so can you speak to that?
Absolutely. When I first started doing research on workplace spirituality, especially in the academic world, it felt completely risky for my academic career. And at the same time, I trusted the universe. So it's like, whatever, I'm going to be who I am. And if you don't like it, you'll fire me and the universe will take care of it.
Yeah.
It'll all be okay. But as soon as I started finding other people, then my courage increased and I could push the edges even more.
Yeah.
And instead of being rejected, I became embraced by my university. I think they liked the fact that I was quoted in Fortune magazine.
That helps.
And Judi Neal from the University of New Haven. I think that, that's good for business. And so that was wonderful. But I really felt like people needed, when you feel so alone and on the edge, you need other people who may be on different edges a little bit, but who see life in a similar kind of way.
Yes,
the willingness to take risks, the willingness to push the edges, and for the greater good. Because there's certainly people who take risks and push edges for selfish reasons, but we're talking about for the greater good.
Yeah.
And then we can encourage each other and inspire each other, and collectively we can make more of an impact. So I've created community in everywhere I've gone, and including in academia. So as you mentioned, the Management, Spirituality, and Religion Interest Group at the Academy of Management.
Yeah.
And the Academy of Management is for management professors all over the world. There's like 20,000 members. And we created this interest group within the Academy. I'm one of the founders, because not that many people were talking openly about leadership and spirituality, or communication and spirituality, or teamwork and spirituality. And so there's people now, hundreds and hundreds of people doing research and teaching where they incorporate spirituality and faith and religion and consciousness into their work. And then they can learn from each other and expand. So I think it's essential.
Well, in our post-COVID world, as we talked about, this sense of, and I'll just use myself as an example, this you have a rich internal life, and you're a loner and you're not a joiner, generally speaking.
Mhm.
And as an Edgewalker, and you have this global community that you can connect with via Zoom. But this new pull for me, that was enough. But since COVID, I have really felt this pull, and you in our conversation had a lovely metaphor for it, this braiding of three types of community: the internal with self, the global, and then around, I feel it around the land that I live on.
Mm-hmm.
My community, whom I'm going to see the most in my everyday and interact with in a deeper way every day.
And you've even built a building to draw community.
I did. Oh, this is a great plug. The Plum at TH2 Live on Instagram. Please follow me. Yes, a salon space in my community where I'm trying to bring together. And we just had a phenomenal event on climate change.
Mm-hmm.
And we wove in the spiritual aspect into the performance. And we had speakers talk about the issues that we face here in the Catskills as well as globally, but it was primarily focused on New York and the Catskills. And it's all about building community, local community, which is the first pull. And I wonder, I think about that as an Edgewalker, which is why I was so excited to find edgewalkers.org.
And what I had done in my own community, wherever I've lived, is to have Edgewalker cafes, which my colleagues invented that term, but it means that's the same thing as salon, where people would come to my living room. We would have some kind of topic, a little bit of some spiritual practice, and just be together with these crazy ideas. And when COVID hit, we took it online, and now we have people calling in from Japan and Africa.
Wow.
It's just incredible. And so I'm sort of missing the living room conversations, and maybe we'll go back to that. But I will never let go of what's happened because of Zoom and being able to be more internationally linked.
Yeah, definitely.
So it's a
growing
worldwide community now, and that just feels so wonderful. It gives me hope for the future. We need our Edgewalkers.
We need our Edgewalkers, and we need that hope. That's another, I was talking with someone today that in this societal perfect storm of crises that we're seeing on the planet, to not have hope means that you're not going to take any kind of action. You're not going to be out in the world serving.
Right. Yeah. So Edgewalkers give us hope because they can see further than others can see. So we need to listen to our Edgewalkers and honor them.
Indeed. Honor the edges, honor the Edgewalkers. Well, so we have just a minute to break, and I'm going to do a little plugging about your website. So it's edgewalkers.org, and there is a bunch of resources on there. There's papers that Judi has written, there's interviews, and when we come back from our break, we're also going to talk with her about her leading edge, which you can also find on her website. But there's, help me here, is what other resources can our listeners find on edgewalkers.org?
Well,
all of your books.
Yes, there's except for I have sold out of the Edgewalker book, so you have to go to Amazon.com because I'm not going to distribute them anymore myself.
Got it.
But all the other books are there, and a lot of podcasts and surveys and instruments you can take, and information about when our Edgewalker cafes are. They're all recorded, so you can listen to those. And I think that's the key things.
It's fantastic.
And we're going to put you on there. This program needs to be on our website.
Excellent. That would be awesome. That would be just awesome. So now it's time for a break. And when we come back with Judi, we are going to talk about what her next leading edge is. And we're going to hear about her music when we come back on the Edge of Everyday.
Hey everybody, it's Tommy D, the nonprofit sector connector, coming at you from my attic. Each week here on talkradio.nyc, I host a program, Philanthropy in Focus. Nonprofits impact us each and every day, and it's my focus to help them amplify their message and tell their story. Listen each week at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time until 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on talkradio.nyc.
In a post-COVID world, you may have many unanswered questions regarding your health. Are you looking to live a healthier lifestyle? Do you have a desire to learn more about mental health and enhance your quality of life? Or do you just want to participate in self-understanding and awareness? I'm Frank R. Harrison, host of Frank About Health, and each Thursday, I will tackle these questions and work to enlighten you. Tune in every Thursday at 5 p.m. on talkradio.nyc, and I will be frank about health to advocate for all of us.
morning, all pet lovers.
Pet Avengers, assemble!
On the Professionals and Animal Lovers show, we believe the bond between animal lovers is incredibly strong. It mirrors that bond between pets and their owners. Through this program, we come together to learn, educate, and advocate.
Join us live every Wednesday at 2 p.m. at talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Chipping around, kick my brain to the ground. These are the days it never rained, but it pours
On the edge of every day. And we are back with Dr. Judi Neal. So, what is your leading edge, Judi?
Well, I'm just deeply committed to exploring this idea of global consciousness now. And that's really arisen out of all the workplace spirituality work, because one of the things that I ran across years ago was Teilhard de Chardin and his work on the evolution of humanity.
Yeah.
And, and if you read the news and you spend a lot of time reading the news, you feel like maybe humanity is going down the tubes.
Is it right? It's going backwards. It's not evolving.
No, which is why it's so good to have positive media like what you're doing, because you can just get a distorted view of the world.
Truly.
And I was starting to get that distorted view until I read Teilhard de Chardin, and then began to see, oh, there's really hope for the human race and for the climate and for humanity and for Mother Earth. And I saw business as being so essential to that, because business is, the quote you read, which comes from John Horman, that he said business is the motor of change on the planet. And so if business is conscious, change is more likely to happen. And it began to feel too slow for me, frankly.
Well, all of it is too slow. Yeah.
Yeah, or even going backwards. And so I thought, well, as an edge walker, what's the next over the edge? If business and spirituality and business is an edge, what's beyond that? Well, it's like planetary spirituality or planetary consciousness. And I know that there's been some very interesting studies out of the Princeton Engineering Anomalies Research Lab. And
say that again, please.
Princeton Engineering Anomalies Research Lab. It's called the PEAR, P-E-A-R, the PEAR Research, that really look to measure consciousness and to measure our consciousness over the material world, how we can impact the physical world with our thoughts. And so if we think positive, we can have a positive impact. And they've now figured out ways to measure collective consciousness. And so that is, they got these, I don't know enough about it, that's why I want to learn more, but they have these instruments like all over the world that measure vibration, and they can tell when a significant event happens. There's actually an intuition beforehand where the vibration starts to get stronger, like right before 9/11, like the hour before the airplanes hit the Twin Towers. Those measurements started to increase, and then they just went off the chart all over the whole planet. So it's engineering research. Yeah, it's not. I don't want to put New Age down because we want a New Age.
But of course, that's where a lot of people's brain, the relationship of science and spirit is one of the, completely really intertwined, of course.
Yeah, particularly quantum physics.
Yeah.
And the idea of quantum leadership. And so that's what I'm really wanting to learn more about and teach about and research about, and support a community around it too, and hold events, and working on getting some grants to further do that kind of research and convenings. And then I'm going to be co-writing a book with Shawan Lee, who's from Fetzer Institute, and he and I will be doing an edited book on global consciousness and reaching out to the best minds in religion and in science and in teaching and all these different domains, art and so on, to see what people are thinking really on the edge of this idea of global consciousness evolving.
Yeah. Well, and it truly is evolving.
Yeah, and I think climate change is really central to that because we're all in it together.
And I think COVID, the pre-show of COVID really helped yank that into that understanding of the interconnectedness of all of us, and really outed some people, the some of the more baser instincts of a handful of humans on and helping to remind people about service to humankind and the planet.
Yeah.
And
And I'm glad you said a handful, because it's not the majority.
No, it's
the
not.
news might make it look like that. That is, most people want all of us to be healthy, all of us to flourish, everyone to have enough food and good education and take care of the women. Most people want that, the majority.
Of course.
Yeah.
They just have to go out and vote.
That's right.
Indeed.
Please do.
Well, I want to spend our last time, I want to talk to you about your band. And I listened to a couple of your tunes, and I just love that you also have music in your life and you're a musician. And so tell us about your band.
Oh, my band is an all-woman band called She's Us, and our website is she'susmusic.com.
So great. She's Us.
We get confused down here in the South where I live in Arkansas, and people go, the Jesus band? And I'm like, no man allowed.
It wasn't planned.
No, just women. And we have more fun. We love each other. We've been together 7 years, and we each play at least one or two instruments, and we each write songs. And
you play.
We all play, we all sing.
No, I mean, do you play what instrument?
I play bass.
Yeah, I saw. Primarily. I was like, oh yes, I love that. You like all cool in the corner.
I grew up in folk music, and I was like, they called me Judi Baez because my songs were Judy Collins and Joan Baez, and the sweet lilting soprano. And then I guess it's something about this time of life or something, but an edge for me is the more driving masculine edge of a bass. Yeah. And so it gives me a whole new voice and a whole new feel. And I love to rock out on bass. I just love it. I'm taking lessons and growing, and it's just, a whole new experience. It's just delightful.
And I love the one song that changing the world one floozy at a time.
Susie Was a Floozy is the name of that song, and if you go to Fayetteville Public Library, that's where we did our concert, and it's videotaped, high tech. Oh my God, they did a beautiful job. And that song was written when the four of us were partying together, and we were talking about, well, what's the name we use for women who seem to other people like they're having too much fun?
I.e. they're crazy, but they're edgewalkers.
Well, they were thinking more like
tramps, yes.
Other words I might not say here. And so our keyboard player went home, and she says, I got to write this song, and because we decided floozy was our favorite word.
Oh my goodness.
So she wrote,
well, I'm going to adopt that. I am going to become an official floozy fan.
Let's create community for floozies.
Yes, I'm down. We'll come up with a fabulous floozy fluff. I'm into alliteration, as you can tell.
I can tell. You'd be a good songwriter.
Well, thank you. I have written a couple of tunes.
Oh, I have to hear yours.
I'm a fledgling songwriter. But I can say that I have written some songs. So yeah, that would be fun.
Yeah,
that would be great fun. Well, we are at the end of our hour, Judi Neal. Aww. And I have just loved this conversation. I am so grateful that you came on. Again, it's edgewalkers.org. And another resource that I wanted to share with people was that I discovered spiritualityatwork.org is another place if people are wanting to think about spirituality in their workplace and perusing the Edgewalker website and using all of those incredible resources. Any last words that you would like to share with our listeners?
Have courage, stay on your edge, push the boundaries, and have fun while you're doing it.
Absolutely, have fun. Well, I thank you all you listeners out there for spending an hour with Dr. Judi Neal and I. Remember, you are always at the edge of the miraculous. Until we speak again next week, take good care. Thanks again.
Thanks, Sandra.
Thank you.
Last dance. This is our last dance. This is ourselves under pressure.